Welcome to Season 2 of Healing the Tigress, a podcast of conversations and stories on Asian American Pacific Islander maternal mental health. We are your hosts, Peggy, a perinatal mental health therapist,
and Jasmine, a clinical pharmacist who is perinatal mental health certified. As Taiwanese American mothers who lived through postpartum depression and anxiety, we felt like we didn't hear about other AAPI mothers struggling with their mental health in new motherhood. But we knew it couldn't just be us.
So we created this podcast because we hope that sharing these stories can start to break the stigma of mental health in our community and help heal the inner tigress in all AAPI parents.
Hi everyone, and welcome back. If you listened to our season intro, you may recall that our most listened to episode last season was with Priya Bhakta, honoring her late sister, Nima Bhakta. It really touched us that so many people tuned in to this episode because we talked about a really difficult but important topic, maternal suicide. And so this season, in honor of Suicide Prevention Awareness Month in September, we wanted to invite on Nima Bhakta's husband, Deven Bhakta.
Before we begin today's episode, we want to give our listeners a trigger warning that in today's episode we will be discussing maternal suicide, which may be difficult or distressing for some of our listeners. If you feel this episode may be triggering for you to listen to, we encourage you to take care of yourself and opt out of listening to this episode for now. Your mental health matters, and we fully support doing what you need to do to take care of yourself. This space will be here if you ever wish to come back at a different time to listen.
So to give our listeners a little bit of background, if you have not heard the story before, Nima Bhakta was a dear mother who was lost to maternal suicide in July of 2020 after battling postpartum depression. Her family has been vocal ever since it happened, making sure to call it what it was, maternal suicide, in order to help destigmatize the issues of maternal mental health, especially in their South Asian communities. They continue to spread awareness and raise money to donate to causes in honor of Nima so that others in the AAPI community do not have to go through the same tragedy.
Deven, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us today about Nima and your own experience in the wake of losing her. I know this can't be an easy conversation, but I think we all know that there is so much power in sharing and being vulnerable, especially over this topic, where sharing might be saving other lives too. Can you start by telling our listeners who may not know your story, what your cultural background is, and also tell us about you and Nima? How did you meet? What was your life like before she got pregnant?
Absolutely, and thank you guys for having me on here. I'm Deven. I'm Gujarati, born and raised in the U.S. So me and Nima, we had a great, normal love story. Getting together in our mid-20s and going along and getting married and starting our lives together, and um, just a normal relationship with our ups and downs as any marital couple has. But yeah, we had a great relationship, and things were on the up and up. We were looking to start a family together, um, starting our lives into what we thought was what in the right direction, and things took a drastic change, especially after she had our little boy Keshav.
Yeah, in our pre-interview questions, you mentioned that pregnancy was actually pretty smooth for Nima, and she seemed pretty ready for motherhood, but that her battle with postpartum depression maybe started on day one. And so about 80% of mothers or so will actually experience baby blues in the first 2 weeks of postpartum. But when it is past that, when it is longer than those 2 weeks and it's still going on, it kind of goes into that postpartum depression zone. So did her battle with this whole thing start the moment Keshav was born, or do you think maybe also was there like a difficult childbirth that also led into or fed into it?
So it's tough to say, but as far as her pregnancy is concerned, I mean, she didn't have any morning sickness. She never really felt fatigued until the last few weeks. She was up. We did a whole move. We moved from Arizona to California back home. Um, she did most of the packing while I was still at work. She was able to do all that pretty much on her own. And so she was very active. Mentally, she was as strong as ever. And literally after we got home from the hospital, it just feels like everything was a struggle for her. Whether it was she was doing everything correctly, but in her mind, everything was done not correctly. And that comes from like, yeah, the baby blues was what the doctors kind of called it for the first 2 weeks. And our family at home, it'll pass, it'll pass, it'll pass. I mean, you hear it from everybody. And as a first time father, you don't get to hear that aspect of it until you're in it. So for me, I'm just telling all these people went through it. Okay, well then it'll just pass. And that's kind of where the cultural background comes into it. Is just, they just believe you push through things. In our culture, you just kind of, if you're struggling with something, you put it behind you and just keep going, and then eventually it'll just pass and everything will just be fine. And I guess that's kind of the same thing as the baby blues, where doctors just believe that I know you think you're doing it wrong, you feel wrong, but it'll just pass. You're doing everything fine, it'll pass, and they kind of just brush it under the rug. And that was a tough situation because the first 2 months we were in the middle of COVID, and we were just struggling with the situation of like she can't get outside, we can't go anywhere. What do we do? They're like try to make doctors are like, oh, it'll just pass. I know we're in COVID, but it's just you got to stay inside, and things will just get continuously get better. Obviously, they didn't, but it was just a time where a learning process happens for a family, and she came to a point where she even was struggling with cutting an avocado. She says, I can't cut an avocado anymore. I don't know how to use a knife, and that stuff was like very triggering, and you kind of felt worrisome, but then you kind of just brush it off like, you're kidding me. And as she goes and cuts an avocado, like she still does it, but she just feels like she can't do it anymore. She really lost herself. And for how prepared she was to becoming a mother was really the big trigger that really, like, I think made it even worse, because she was great with kids growing up. She was a dance teacher with kids of all different types of like problems, whether they were like just normal kids or people that have couldn't walk, or people who were suffering from ADD. She was very comfortable being around kids. She was comfortable with her nieces and nephews. Like once her sisters came around and they had the kids, she was there. She was available, wanting to be involved. Same with any of my nieces and nephews. So it was for someone to be so prepared to become a mother and then struggle with it. I think made that intensify her struggle with postpartum.
Yeah. It's almost like, why am I not better at this? You have another layer of like expectation or thinking other people are also watching you and expecting you to blossom and be so proficient at all of it. But new motherhood is just one of those things that it's going to look different for everyone. And sometimes you go into it thinking, I'm just going to have the intuition. It's just going to come to me. And it doesn't necessarily. It doesn't always come to you. And even to this day for myself, I still feel like I didn't really understand when my daughter was crying, like what did that mean? Like some moms are like, oh, I can tell that's a wet diaper cry, and I'm like, I can't tell. Like,
Mhm.
and those kinds of things can make you, if you're already a person that's so used to being good at it all and perfectionistic and stuff, like that can kind of come as a shock, I think, when you're experiencing that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other thing that stood out to me too is that it was more in her head. Like you said, the avocado example, she's like, I can't do this. And so a lot of the I can't, I'm not doing as well as I should be better at this. From your eyes, it seems like she really wasn't failing as a mother, but that failure was in her mind of like, I can't even cut an avocado. And you're like, well, what are you talking about? And then she did. Right. And so that battle so often is so hard to see because it's in the mind of the mother that's struggling, is that like,
Of
I'm not
course.
doing this well, I'm not doing that. And yet I think what's really beautiful about your relationship with her was that even though you looked at her and was like, she's a beautiful mother, you knew that something was off. And while you said in the culture, it's just easy to brush things off and say things are just fine, you knew in your gut as well, something is not fine. And we kind of hear this in Priya's episode where
Hmm.
she talked about the first time Nima saw the OB, I believe. And since it was COVID, you couldn't be in the room. And so she
Yeah.
had to go to this appointment alone. But luckily, there was a part of you who was like, no, I need you to put me on speaker on the phone so that I can be a part of this appointment. And, as she's describing her symptoms to the doctor and just trying to brush it off as everything's fine, you spoke up and you're like, no, please tell the doctor what's really going on. I think that is so powerful. There's something so powerful about that encounter because you could have easily just done what kind of feels culturally normal or what you were saying, just like brush it off, let her speak for herself, or not even participate, or just kind of be like, okay, she'll just go to this appointment by herself. What was it that compelled you to make sure Nima like had you on speakerphone in that appointment, and then as well as like speaking up for her?
I think the thing that really triggered it for me was it was actually her second OB appointment. She had gone to the first
Mm,
one, and I was in the parking lot. The second one is where she had gone in, but she wasn't able to even iterate what was going on in her mind to myself.
mm,
And so I knew she needed to talk to somebody. She couldn't talk. She wasn't talking to her sisters, and this is a girl that talks to her parents and her sisters on a daily basis. Like she wants to see the nieces and nephews, wants to talk to her sisters like every day. And if she skips 2 days, like she's on the phone for an hour, then a third day. So her not being able to do those things that were normal for her were really kind of turning me off. And then her not being able to express herself to me was something that very like caught my eye. Like maybe she's just not speaking properly to this doctor, and I want to hear what the doctor is saying to her as well. Like what is going on? So I was like, go in there, and within 15 minutes she called me, and then I don't know what they had discussed beforehand, but I got in there and I was like, all right, now let's get into the details and let me hear you tell the doctor what it is. And I told her beforehand, and I think she was prepping herself to get in there. And then she kind of gave it the gist of what needed to be said. And then I just wanted to make sure I was able to give 2 cents to this doctor so he understood that there was a certain concern that it wasn't just the baby blues anymore. Like something is really wrong with her. What is going on? And they had prescribed her some medications, but getting her to take that medication was also very difficult. That
mhm.
also goes back to our culture. We don't take meds often. We barely take our vitamins, and we're sick. We try to let our bodies fight itself. And so that was another thing. And then also there's a modern medicine stigma that it is out there as well.
Yeah.
Whether how much you believe it, what it'll do to you, why do you not want to be relying on it? And I think that really scared her. And so she never really tried the medications as well. But
Mm.
it's something that I really wanted to make sure that that doctor knew that something was going on. And I think for us here in SoCal, Kaiser took a big toll to even when they found out about her because those doctors saw her in the offices. They didn't see me. So the first time the doctors saw me with Gesha, they were like, oh, this is that person. And then they even reiterated, look, we've changed our measures ourselves at the first 2 weeks to make sure what we're doing is correct because I don't think we had the right things in order.
You're saying this is a follow-up appointment, so it must have been her 6-week appointment and then another follow-up appointment after
Yeah,
that. Okay.
yeah.
I feel like most people don't even get that follow-up appointment.
Yeah.
Was this something you guys planned to schedule?
We planned it again because she was constantly worried about Keshav. He wasn't eating, he's not growing. Like those are things that constantly were in her mind. And she felt like she wasn't producing enough and she wasn't eating enough and all that stuff. So I was like, well, make another appointment, go in there and see the doctor again. Let's see what's going on. And seeing the OB was hand in hand. The doctor was able to see Keshav as well. So
Okay.
I kind of made it so it was more about him than it was about her. But
Mhm.
you had to play those little games to get her to go back and do something. So
Wow. And did they, and at that appointment, so you said they prescribed medications. Was there anything
mhm.
else that they suggested?
Only thing they said was just try to get outside. I know we're in the middle of COVID, but just
Mm.
try to get some fresh air and backyard and do whatever you can outside. And we tried that. We went on a few walks, but it wasn't. I don't know. It just didn't work out.
I think that layer of the COVID and unknown, because it was so new, and she was also so new at being a mom, I feel like everything probably just was scary.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's another layer. And I imagine that also, like, some folks listening today are partners of someone that might be going through what Nima was going through in terms of depression or signs of like withdrawal or just not really themselves, and then kind of wondering like what should they look for, what are signs, and are there any things that you would say were some of the biggest warning signs or red flags in Nima's behavior, other than the fact that, like, you're like, she's not quite herself? But was there anything else like big or actions that she did or something that stood out to you?
It's it's tough to go through those moments and say, hey, this is something that she would do and she didn't do. Obviously, there were things that when she, me and her worked together. So I mean, we're in the hotel industry. So she was kind of my backbone. I was the face of a lot of stuff, but she was the person that took care of my filing and XYZ. And as soon as Kesha came in, I knew that was off limits. I'm going to go back and take care of all that myself. I already kind of knew that as we got into month 3 or 4, I kind of mentioned, hey, like, can you come back and like get back to paperwork and stuff? And that kind of, she was like, I'm not gonna do it. Like, I've never heard her say I'm not gonna do that ever in my
Mm-hmm.
life. And that's one trigger to see somebody that is able to know. She organized my entire file cabinet, and that's the way it is, and it's in order because that's how she knew that this order is the only thing that's gonna work. So when she took that out of place, for her to be sloppy, that was a big difference of her lifestyle. And that not because that's what she wanted, but that's just she didn't care for it anymore. And so finding things that they used to care about and what they don't care about anymore. It might be little things, it might be big things. It just really depends. Along with like calling her sisters on a regular basis and not caring to do that anymore. Things that are not normal for them to be in a normal routine that they would do before pregnancy, and they aren't doing those things after a certain amount of time. I think that really kind of changes your mentality of how you see that person.
Yeah.
And so I saw her just not being who she wanted to be anymore. And there's obviously like the triggers of for someone that's cut 1,000 avocados that says I can't cut an avocado. It's a little, take those things and don't take them for a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
At least value what you see and say, hey, can you really cut it? Let's see, like figure out what that entails. Um, but really, there are things like I wish I would have done when she was there. If I would have found her letter, she wrote the letter, what I can tell, almost 4 months before she was. That means around the week 6, around March. She passed away in July. We had things go on in that middle of it. My brother passed away in June.
Oh, I'm so
So that
sorry.
that took a big toll in our relationship, and not our relationship, but our family household. And so that I I my cousin, after she read the note, she said, well, this is written, even she put in different paragraphs to each member of the family, and my brother included. So she did it before he had passed.
Wow.
She already had written this letter. And if I would have found that letter, and that goes into like finding her phone, right? I think I've never been through her phone. We have that kind of relationship. It's open book, but we trust each other that we never had to go through that. But if I would have found that letter beforehand, I think things would have been I would have tried to at least seek more help.
Yeah.
I would have been a lot more worried, but there was just so much stuff going on in that time, along with COVID, along with family members passing away. And then obviously leading up to that point, there was just so much that was going on. And emotionally, I think that really took a toll on her because in her letter, she expressed to me certain things like she just couldn't be the wife that she used to be, couldn't be there for me emotionally through that hard time, physically, the works. She just wasn't herself, and she couldn't force herself to get back to that point anymore. And looking for triggers like that, if you find things that you do on a emotional background and they won't do it anymore, I'd force it to try to get that back. Um, as their partner, you have to do a little bit more to make them want to get back to that relationship because they don't feel themselves anymore. And when they don't feel that, you'll know that they're not, but you can't just ignore it. You have to figure out what those little details are that make them who they are, and make sure they don't lose them.
Yeah. I'm so sorry about your loss with your brother too. And that was like a month before you lost
Yeah,
Nima.
1
I,
month before. Yeah.
I mean, that must have been really hard for two big losses in such a short span of time. Um, how were you able to find that strength? after two big losses, and to be able to say, we're gonna share this. I just my mind's kind of blown right now, like thinking of what you had been going through, and then still finding that strength to lead your family through this.
Absolutely. It was a drastically difficult time, but the thing with Indian households and most Asian households is your family shows up. And during COVID, we're in the middle of lockdown and we're not supposed to have people over. And we were having prayers with 50, 60, 70 people in our household, just because that that burden that we carry as a family, and that your friends show up, your family shows up, and that sense of support can get you through anything. Um, and some people don't have that kind of backing. In the letter that Nima left me, she even mentioned, she's like, the people that are going to get you through this are going to be your friends and your family. And she kind of knew where everybody was heads were at. So for her, she knew where it was going to be, and she kind of guided me to make sure that, look, at all these people are here for you. Like, you can get through this, and you'll be fine on the other half. But it took a definite toll, and it didn't get better as the year went on. I ended up losing my dad's brother. Both my dad's brothers were lost in the next 6 months, so it was a very difficult year and a half, along with going on COVID. But we relied on each other. I had family that they were already working from home, so they were just staying with me for months at a time, taking that burden to think of. Geshev was not being able to be taken care of. That was taken off my shoulders for a little while. I wasn't alone. And that anybody that feels like they're alone, especially in times like these, you have to be able to rely on somebody else. Otherwise, you just won't be able to get through it.
That theme of not being alone, I wish Nima were able to feel that more, because it seemed like she was alone in her mind. And even though she knew everyone was there, and she foresaw you would have this community, and I wish she could see that, like, she was deserving of that you're not alone. Like you said, that's a really powerful way of reminding people that it's okay to lean on your village, and you're going to have to during this time. There's no award for being the strongest, most independent person that's doing it on your own. Like, there's no winning in that. Okay, we do have to rely on people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's nothing weak about asking for help. And I think we talked about it in Priya's episode too, of like, she there's so much help and she just wasn't able to accept it. And the other thing I'm also hearing too is so much of how postpartum depression lies to the mother, like in their mind. Like, the family showed up, you have a huge family. When we shared the episode last year, the number of Instagram accounts with Bhakta in it that was like supporting, I was like, oh man, this family shows up.
Of
And yet
course.
she still felt so alone because it lies to you. Postpartum depression lies to you and tells you things in your mind. Your own mind betrays you in those moments of what is real and what is not. And yet here's this family, so many people, and they showed up for you, right? And they showed up for Keshav. And yet it really wasn't something she was able to feel, and no fault of anybody's. I think that's one thing we always have to remember. There's people can spin around of like, maybe we should have done this, if only we had done this.
That beat around that bush so long that it just makes you go crazy.
Yeah, there's and I think that's the thing with grief is, and that's even a stage in grief, right, of like the bargaining, like, if only I had done this. And it doesn't bring anyone back. But instead, I think of the what you're doing even here today with us is sharing for other people, like what they can do. And as we talk about how Indian families show up, you did share in our pre-interview questions, you said Indian families are built in a way that is a blessing and a curse at times. Love to hear more what you mean by that.
So you heard the blessing. The blessing is that they'll show up and they'll do everything for you. But the curse is that same family also will look at you continuously, vigorously. And as you're coming into a new family in our culture, right? I'm the youngest of my all my siblings, all my cousins. So she came in as the youngest sister-in-law, daughter-in-law, um, and she had a lot of expectations to fill, and that's she filled them. She never was never one that was. It was built in her to be the ideal for me, the ideal woman in my life. She checked every box, um, and so when she was feeling the way she was feeling, they saw it, and she didn't want them to look at her negatively. She didn't want them to feel like they're having to change their aspirations of who I am, and that probably definitely took a toll on her. She wasn't able to be the daughter-in-law she wanted to be to my mom anymore, even though at this time now my mom, one son's gone, me and my sister are still here, and so she's feeling she has to step up and she can't do it. And that also, I think that when I look back on it, that's what I see is it's a curse because she was built this way. She was brought up with this Indian household this way to be this amazing person that can do everything for a culture that she believed in, for a family that she believed in. But that same culture is what was not get was didn't allow her to express herself in the way she needed to because she was scared that the culture will see her a different way. The family will see her a different way. And she didn't want to lose that momentum. I wouldn't say momentum, but that stature of I am this person. I am this confidence in me is because of who I am. And she wasn't able to be who she was anymore. And she really lost herself. And that really took a negative toll on what she thought her family needed her for, and she wasn't able to do it. So that cultural difference of, hey, I'm this person and I can't be this person is why our culture has that tug and pull of good and the bad. And that's just my opinion on it. But it's also why a lot of moms that went through postpartum depression never talked about it. It was never spoken. That's why we wanted to bring out this conversation of, hey, let's talk about it. And we've had numerous people in our culture that say I won't do the same thing. I've been on medication for such a long time, but just never said anything.
Wow.
But that that ability to not be able to talk about it because you're afraid of what your culture will see and what your family will see is what brings so much negativity towards it. And that's what we want to break, and that's what breaking the stigma is all about.
I feel some of the same themes of like saving face, kind of, or just upholding this image as like high and ridiculous as it must be to uphold this while you are in a transition period in your life and maybe some of the lowest moments of your life, and you're still maybe people aren't expecting it, but you are thinking they're expecting it too. So I hear a lot of thoughts and themes of shame and worthlessness and guilt, even if it's not true. But that's what was revolving around in her mind because she was trying to conceptualize, who am I at this point? And who am I if I can't be these things? And that's the hard part, I think, in motherhood, is finding yourself again and blending all of those things back together. It can be really hard when you're also trying to figure out how to keep somebody alive that's not
Of
just
course,
yourself, right?
absolutely.
So I can really resonate with a lot of those things you're sharing, that curse of the sort of expectations of saving face still. I feel like that's very common across Asian culture, in different ways maybe, but the underlying theme and undertone is still kind of there. So yeah, I can relate to some of those feelings of pressure that she had that you're sharing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and we've had other South Asian guests who kind of mentioned too the cultural expectations of women in South Asian cultures as well as really being super women. You see it modeled in your mothers and your grandmothers who just had to do it all and had to do it all and push through it all. And you mentioned it earlier in this episode too. Just the expectation is to push through it all, is to just pull yourselves by your bootstraps and do it all. And I can see why, even though no one was necessarily doing that, it sounds like the family has been supported from day one. There is that internalized message of just how that culture is brought up to view mothers and women in general is to, she fit the mold and continue to do that. Don't mess up. You've done it great so far, and I can see why that there is, again, that cultural pressure to be a certain type of wife, mother, daughter-in-law, all these things.
I almost wonder, and I mean, we talked about this a little bit with Priya, that like if she had a South Asian therapist or someone who could sort of understand this underlying background, she had someone that was more culturally congruent to talk to, because you were saying that she couldn't say this stuff to anybody else. Like even in my family, it's like, oh, why are you talking to a therapist? Just talk about it with a family member who knows you better than your family. But it's not the same thing, right? Like if you could talk to somebody, but again, even talking to a therapist, not just any therapist, talking to somebody who actually kind of understands the nuance and that background, that could be so important. And it sounds like she didn't really find the right fit in terms of who she was talking to. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we could have been more in person during COVID, and you got to get uncomfortable when you're talking to a therapist, and talking on the phone or via the internet is just not something that makes you very uncomfortable. Um, Sitting in a chair in front of somebody you don't know and talking about certain issues is a lot different than talking over a Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
So I wish we had those abilities. There's a lot of wishes that you could do go back and we think bad about it now, but
Of course.
absolutely. I mean, finding a right match for a therapist is very tough. And I was just talking to one of my buddies that was starting therapy, and he said, I just don't know if the therapist is right for me. I don't think therapy is right for me. I said, you can't go to one. You got to try 10 before one will fit perfectly
Yep.
for you.
It's like dating.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, I say that a lot when I do have new clients. I might not be the right fit for you, and that's okay, because the number one predictor of how successful a therapy session or a therapy relationship will be isn't the modality or the type. It's really that relationship, the relationship you have with a therapist. And they could be trained for X amount of years and be certified in 10 million things. But at the end of the day, it's a very relational healing process. And if part of what will help you heal is someone who has a cultural understanding of why you are feeling the way you do, then by all means, that's a great fit. And this isn't to say, oh, if someone doesn't share cultural similarities with you, they're not going to be a great fit. It is a trial. And it's hard, though, because people will go into therapy, share their story, figure out maybe 2-3 sessions, and, oh, this isn't working for me. I have to tell my story again to someone else. But if it means that you're going to get the care that you need, it's worth it, even if it means you do have to share a story over again. And there is something that can be said that is healing about telling that story again. So even if it means, hey, this therapist isn't working for me, I'm going to have to see another one and tell the story again, there may be nuggets of things that therapist can say that the next therapist won't say. And it's really like, it is a lot like dating, who some people might enjoy and not enjoy. But if it's going to help you find someone who's going to really walk that journey with you to help you get the help you need, then it's worth it.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot just slightly. You've sort of talked about the letter that you guys found was it your cousin that found it in Nima's drafts or email drafts or something?
So I found it while I was going through her phone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And so you were the first one then. What can we hear maybe about, we heard Priya's reaction and how helpful that was to her. Can you share with us maybe what it was like for you to read those words?
Absolutely. So the first time going through it, I didn't even read the whole thing. I got through about the first 5 sentences and then I lost it. But very something I hope no one ever has to read. But obviously, it's something that is the biggest beneficial factor for me, my family, society. When those words that when I read that, she read it, she wrote it to every single person. She took time, she took effort. She knew exactly what everyone needed to hear to help push, give it that slight push so you're moving past the situation. Um, a sense of relief as hard as that is to say, a sense of relief of what did I do wrong personally to have this happen, to be like, it's not your fault, it's okay. Like I'm not blaming you. I want you to know that it's not your fault. You're not the reason. As selfish as maybe that I'm making that sound right now, it really took a huge chunk of burden off my shoulder to be like, hey, like she's not blaming me, but it's something that I couldn't help her get past. Um, and so it was the calming after a huge storm, that I had my first peaceful night of sleep after that. And that was, I mean, I might have not have slept for a week, so, and that kind of gave me a day of sleep. That's how much that letter really took a lot out of me, and just was able to be like, okay, like this, you're telling me how to move past it. Then I absorbed that help. She guided me on why this is happening. Okay, well now I understand. Um, and so it was a tough letter, but it was something that definitely really calmed not only myself, it calmed Bria, it calmed her parents, my mom, my sister-in-law, really got them to understand, like, okay, well, this was something that, as much as we tried to control a situation, it was something that it wasn't in our control, and it's not your fault, and it's not anyone's fault. And
I think in these situations, we have to remember that placing blame is really not going to help anybody, right? Whether it's her placing blame on something or you guys placing blame on yourself. It almost felt like she was still taking care of you and thinking about all of you and planning for how to help you guys, even beyond. And
absolutely,
that just shows what an amazing person she was.
yeah, 100%. That letter, even to society, I think when she wanted to let people know, like, hey, like this is a serious matter. You guys can't, not just us as a household, but a society as a household can't let this keep going because we think that the baby blues is something that's normal and I'll just pass. It does might not happen for everybody, and so let's take some serious measures and change life for everyone as a society. And so that was, I mean, it was out. Even the letter she wrote to me is a lot different than the letter she wrote to society. But what I think she left for society is something that should and have changed so many lives. Um, when we shared that part of her letter, there were women from all, I mean, I think South America, from a lot from India,
Wow.
reaching back on Facebook within a week, and within 24 hours, I had already someone that reached back out to me that said that this you sharing this story really kind of saved my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I woke up within 6 hours and was, well, I asked my cousin at that time, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. Can we resend the letter? And she said, just give it a little bit of time. And
Wow.
there it was. Within 24 hours, someone already had reached out. And that's how powerful just sharing the story was. And for me, I was about to throw my family, my society, her name all into the ground, right? Those were the feelings that I had when we initially shared her story. And but sharing that story because of what she left us in her letter, really got to people. And I mean, I couldn't be happier that we shared the story now. Um, couldn't be happier for the women that it helped.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that they knowing that they're not alone in this struggle, and that it's okay to ask for help.
I think it was just a sign, right? Like you just had to wait it out and see that she was onto something. She she knew this had to be shared,
No,
and
absolutely.
and it just also speaks to kind of maybe your chemistry. You understood like she what she wanted as well. So yeah,
I feel like it was so groundbreaking for the Indian American community. I feel like we had, before we started recording, we talked about how small our worlds are, like the friends that we know that know you and stuff. But it really set an example. So I feel like a ripple effect of, like you said, and I think Priya shared that story too, of the person whose life was saved just within 24 hours of hearing the story. and the crucial importance of not shying away, not brushing things under the rug, and speaking them out. Even today, being here today to share this story, I imagine there's still people today that are responding to Nima's story and reaching out and saying thank you for speaking out on this.
Of course, of course.
Yeah. And, I imagine it's also challenging being a single dad. I mean, beyond all of this story, your life still goes on, and you are still a father, and you still have a child to raise. Have you thought about how or when you might share with your son about his mother and how amazing she was, or have you already? And does he even ask questions now?
So he knows who his mom is. We still have a lot like the picture I have here in the back. We still have pictures of her around the house. She knows that that's his mom, and she refers to her as Mimi. And I never want him to forget that. I will say stories like, "Oh, your mom used to do this," or "This is you act just like your mom." I'll say it, but sometimes when I ask him who his mom is, he thinks it's my mom. He thinks
Mm.
grandma's here, so grandma's my mom, and my sister lives with me, so those are her moms. Or like Bria, when Bria's around, like they'll take care of him, like they're his, So like he has family around that really shows that he knows he doesn't have a mom, but he thinks these people are his caretakers, his mothers. That's how he refers to them as. Um, as far as the story of how she passed, what happened, I think when he gets to a certain age, maybe into his 12s, 13, when he understands death a little bit more and what all that entails. Right now he's still so young. He's 4, going to be 5 at the end of the year. But for me, the greatest thing is I have so much family around me. I have such a good relationship with my in-laws, with Bria, with her family, and her Nima's older sister Dixie. And so seeing them, he's also involved in their in that side of our family as well. So he gets to know that side. I don't shy away from, hey, you can't go see that side of the family anymore. Nothing like that. I want him to be part of that family, and I want him to be part of our family. And they treat me just like more than even a son-in-law, just the regular son now. And that ability to have that kind of bond between two families was brought together, yeah, by our marriage, but to continue that just because she's gone is not only beneficial for myself, it's beneficial for Kesha in the long run, absolutely.
Yeah, that's so
He's
beautiful.
he's definitely benefiting from the village that shows up, right, and all the people that are surrounding him with love. Um, one thing that we thought of too as we talk about this, it's one thing we got to talk to Priya last year, but to talk to the actual husband and partner of someone who lost their life, we couldn't help but be like, I hope Deven's okay. I hope this, even as we talk about this, that he's taking care of himself and prioritizing his mental health. What are some ways you did prioritize your own mental health, either directly after losing Nima, or even to this day, ways that you are, prioritizing your own mental health?
Absolutely. So right after I mean, we were still in the middle of COVID. I was going through the motions of grieving and then moving forward and having certain conversations with people and then having tough conversations with people. Like one conversation is my father-in-law sat me down a few months after and he said, like I want you to move forward with your life. I want you to find a new partner in your life. And I'm sitting there, I'm looking my father-in-law me dead in his eyes, and my mother-in-law is weeping on the other side. But it's something he thought he needed to get out of it, saying as, "Hey, I know I'm your father-in-law, but she's gone. I need you to move on, not only for your sake, but for Kesha's sake. Hopefully, you can build another family and move on." And those kinds of conversations were definitely difficult, but they were conversations that really brought me back to earth. Every time I would sit there and be like, moving past minds wandering, they would bring me down and be like, "Okay, like this is life. Like it's okay to move on. It's okay to do these things. Don't hold yourself down." Having that family to kind of settle you into life again and get you back into work and get you back into life and keep pushing you to keep moving forward are things that kind of definitely helped. And then obviously, about 7 months ago, I started therapy. So I started talking to my therapist, and that was very beneficial because I was able to relive things that I didn't even remember happened in those last 6 months after she passed. I rekindled again, and I got to really work through those moments as much as they were tying me down. I got to work through that one more time and got to relive it and then actually process through it. Um, for me, one of my biggest things, I really got into sports. So I started playing volleyball twice a week, play little bit more golf. Um, but a lot of team sports, I play softball. That goes into our softball tournament that we throw. But it was stuff that I can still do. We used to play softball. Me and Nima played adult softball together after we got married. That's why I do the tournament. So playing softball always reminds me of her. So that's kind of my connection to her. But it's also I get to beat a ball or be out active a little bit, and it kind of just pushes me through the moments. And definitely, sports is one of my biggest how would I put that? Biggest things for me to process my daily life because it's a mental reset when I'm done playing a sport, being active, and I'm able to just be there, mentally clear, and then come back and then start life again. So those are kind of three things that kind of help.
Yeah, we've had other dads on the podcast who part of their, there's therapy, but then also like after therapy, they're like, just being active. It is really helps and is really therapeutic. And, just love that it also ties to the softball tournament that you guys do, I think annually for Nima. Is that right?
Annually, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Annually.
Yeah.
That softball tournament it always creates one conversation once a year to make sure that people talk about it for a little bit, and then at least it triggers in their mind, like, hey, like, oh yeah, you remember this? Oh yeah, that happened, this happened, and then it's at least a conversation starter for a lot of people, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we still have to. I mean, maternal suicide is still a leading cause of maternal mortality in this country, and so continuing this conversation is really important. And it's really amazing that Nima really lives on and continues to help in this conversation and topic and drive, the significance of continuing this work. And I like the idea of having an annual thing to come to, something she loved, something you loved, something that brought you guys together. I think that's amazing that you guys do that every year. And we can certainly like promote or link when this is happening again. If there's listeners out there that are interested and want to see what that's more about, we'll
Of
definitely
course.
tell more about that. But I think it's so great that you're finding ways to honor her and take care of yourself. I immediately thought of also that other dad episode Peggy was referring to when you mentioned the sports, and that like physical activity is something that helps bring peace to him and his mental health, and helps strengthen that. And really, yeah, those endorphins that you get from exercising, that is like a natural like reward system and dopamine system. So thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad that you're processing this through therapy, and hopefully you found a great therapist you love, and we're destigmatizing the fact that like therapy is really cool. Like therapy is awesome and it's helpful and you can do it, and it's necessary. Like it's in its own form, like physical activity too, to go to therapy. Yeah,
I mean, absolutely. I think therapy for me in general, I think of therapy as kind of like I'm about to start playing a basketball game or playing some kind of sport. I get in there and my stomach is churning, like, what is this guy gonna ask me? What are we gonna talk about today? Then you sit down and you get into it, and then like your mind starts wandering, and that's it's it's very beneficial for somebody that has to get over the hump. And for me in particular, it took me a long time, almost 3 years before I got off that hump. Like, okay, let me go try this. Like, let me muster up the courage and get in there. And I got lucky. I got matched with uh, an Asian therapist, and he just kind of he just wants me to listen, and he'll put in trigger points, and I'll just keep talking, and he'll sway me a different way, and I'll keep talking, and before you know it, 45 minutes is up, and he's like, "Are you good?" I said, "Yeah, I'm good." He said, "All right, well then let's go." You know.
Everyone has different things they want out of therapy. Some people like having homework. Some people just want to vent. Some people just want to talk, and other people like being coached and moved along. So, I'm glad you found somebody that worked well with you. As far as like other mothers right now, if there's anyone listening out there who might be silently suffering and having thoughts of self harm, Is there anything you might want to say to them?
Motherhood is tough, and you're going to go through a lot of different emotions. And if you have a spouse, or if you're doing it on your own, find somebody that will give you a minute or give you 2 minutes a day just to talk about something else, or make you feel like you want to do something that you used to like to do, whether it's outside, go outside for a run, or go out and sit in the grass and have a picnic. Find things that you enjoy and try to go do those things again if you're not doing it. Making yourself uncomfortable as a new mother, you're already uncomfortable with where you are in society and where you are with yourself. But if you can make yourself uncomfortable with doing an activity that you don't like, especially with pickleball coming up, I say go play pickleball. Do something you will have to force yourself to get comfortable with. If you're not, being uncomfortable is the only way you're going to be able to make you feel better. Because if you can get uncomfortable to be comfortable, that means you're doing everything right. And so I would just try to be yourself, and um, continue to find what makes you uncomfortable and make it comfortable.
I like that almost in a way, it's like that permission to be in the discomfort, and that
Mm-hmm.
that's actually kind of normal and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe some mothers are like, why is this so hard? Like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, well, you're not. And it is hard. It is hard because it is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it feel well. What I think Dr. Becky always says, this feels hard because it is hard, right? And so it's kind of like that. Along the flip side, then, is there something you would tell those who have lost someone to maternal suicide?
Now that I've been through it, I would say long enough, I would say, like, it's gonna be okay. Lean where you need to lean. It's okay to lean on people and lean on them as much as possible, and don't feel like you're overbearing. When you feel like you're doing too much, they'll let you know, like, I can't do this anymore. But until you get to that point, just lean on those people around you. Know that there are people that care about you, and know that the people around you are not only defy you, but are the people that will help you get to where you want to be. And it's whether it's going over one hump or 10 humps, they'll help you get there. You just got to ask for it and lean on them to get there.
Yeah. Don't do it alone, right?
Don't do it
There's
alone.
no
Not
need
at
to do
all.
it alone. I mean, that advice for both, right? The ones who've lost and the mothers, like, we don't need to do any of this alone. And there are people who want to help. Well, we absolutely love that you have been able to be here to share your side of the story. We talked a little bit about what you're currently doing to continue to spread awareness from the softball tournament. Can you tell us a little bit more about just the different things you are currently doing? I know that the hashtag Break the Stigma for Nima was created. Tell us a little bit more about just the forward movement of what you and the family are doing now.
So now trying to keep the conversation alive in a lot of different ways. The time of that initial happening, and as you continue on, it kind of decreases. Um, Life continues to go on. You don't have the time to do the things you had to do before. So we're not as socially active with our Instagram and stuff anymore. But when something good comes along, like your guys' beautiful podcast, we'll be able to project that when that comes out. Um, and other things that come across our board, we'll repost those things, and just keep that. Now that it has a certain amount of followers, it's great for when we post that. Oh, like, it's a refresher. And so we like to keep that conversation alive. We try to keep ourselves in the moment at times. And so, as a lot of the adult moms, um, they have that conversation now. And so, having them continuously to have that conversation again. So, as to when that new mom comes with a new daughter-in-law, and she goes through that conversation is not something that has stopped. So that way they don't feel that they can't do something. So that's just, as we proceed, that's just what we want to keep doing, is continuing to talk and wanting women to continuously feel free, like, and spouses to listen, understand, don't brush stuff under the rug anymore. Let's think about it and actually think about what's happening and what's in this current moment and how we can fix things.
I love all the stuff you guys are doing. And again, really just commend your whole family for being so brave to put this out there. It sucks to have to be the brave one, because it means that that happened to you. But in a way, I feel like it's Nima's light living on. And we want to continue to honor that as well, and spread her light. So hopefully this does that. Um, we're going to wrap up a little bit here, but what is one thing you would go back and tell yourself when you were in the thick of it? We're kind of wrapping our this season up with this ending for our guests to think back, present Deven now. You might have said some things already, but present Deven now, going back to past Deven, and what's something you think you might tell yourself to help yourself in the healing process?
Oh, there's so many things that when you look back onto it, of where you could have got yourself out of the rut you were in a lot quicker. And for me, I think it's definitely, if I wouldn't have got over the hump of going into therapy earlier, I would have definitely got myself to a point of where talking about it was a lot cleaner. Was anger was not an issue. I wouldn't have had to go through so many more emotions um, by myself because I didn't express these emotions to anybody else. This was just stuff that I dealt with myself. But if I had gone into therapy and had those experiences earlier, um, not that maybe I would even do it if I was to relive it again. Who knows if I would have hit that hump earlier? But if I could, I would say get in there and try and see if it'll help you get over that hump. Um, because getting over that first hump is definitely the biggest hurdle after going through something so traumatic.
Yeah, it is very traumatic. And I feel like also our Asian men almost feel like there's this other sort of invisible force saying that you're a man, you should be able to handle that and you don't need extra help. But no, everyone needs help. It doesn't
Mhm.
matter if you're a man or a woman. Like this whole thing shows us right here. Everyone needs help sometimes and they deserve to get the help that they need. And I really love that you shared that. So thank you
Yeah.
for being
Yeah,
honest
of
about that.
course.
I think what I also love about it is you are raising a future Indian American man and modeling that for him as well. Is that as a male, I too can seek help and get support. Because that's one of the toughest things you ever have to go through. And to say that you don't need to get help after losing someone so close to you, I think that's another gift you're giving your son is that modeling of taking care of yourself in that way.
Completely. And now I'm also thinking last year when we started this podcast and really, really wanted to highlight this story, I had reached out to Priya, gotten her number from a friend of a friend. And I was like, she was like, oh, Deven would be open to talking to. And, we had just kicked this off and weren't really sure what we were doing. And I was like, well, maybe both of them can be on. It could be like a 4-person conversation. And now I'm thinking, like, man, the stars really worked out the way they did. And, you've gotten therapy in between the time and now. And, like, maybe they just worked out this way that we had this
Mm-hmm.
conversation with you this year instead of last
Yeah,
year.
totally agree.
Absolutely.
It just warms my
Yeah,
heart.
yeah. Yeah. And we are so grateful to be able to be a vessel for you to continue to share Nima's story. We're just so honored. I know that it can't be easy to talk about it, but like you said, as you're getting more support and as the family is getting support, there's no better time than now. And knowing that again, people listening might have their lives saved because of you sharing. And even though as time goes on, you said it maybe people aren't talking about it as much, I think even if one person hears the story or listens to this episode or even Priya's episode and it changes their life, that's a huge ripple effect of a life saved. So we're just really grateful that you spent this time with us and with this podcast and to share the story.
Of course. And I appreciate you guys again continuing this conversation and breaching out this awareness of it's okay to need help or it's okay to talk about certain things. And you guys bring out the best in your podcast. And I think that's a very beneficial thing that a lot of listeners and even myself truly appreciate. So thank you again.
Thank you again, Devin, for your time today. If you or a mother you know is having thoughts of self-harm, please call or text these lines. The National Crisis and Suicide Hotline is 988. The National Maternal Mental Health Hotline is 1-833-852-6262, or you can remember it as 1-833-TLC-MAMA. And lastly, the Postpartum Support International Hotline is 1-800-944-4773. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Healing the Tigress. The more we share these stories, the more we can help other AAPI mothers and partners. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to keep supporting this mission, please hit the subscribe button to the show and take a few seconds to leave a rating. An extra big thanks if you would also leave a review to boost our show visibility and help other AAPI folks find us.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Healing the Tigress, or even better, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Healing the Tigress podcast to support us more. Inside the Patreon, we will be offering more bonus episodes, sneak peeks, and a community for you to help shape our podcast too. Thanks for being here.
Healing the Tigress is produced and edited by Peggy and Jasmine.
Music for this show is remixed by Dr. Tony Huynh of Tony Mixes.
Our intro music is a cover of You and Me by Z Avi, played by our co-host Peggy.
Our outro music is a cover of Green Island Serenade, played by Jasmine's sister.
Cover art design is by Dr. Angela Chung.